This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
This week on the podcast Spark and Fire, visual artist Mark Bradford.
People always ask, well, didn't you know when you were in 5th grade and you were creative?
Mark has to learn how to embrace himself as an artist and find what he needs to create.
I didn't grow up like that. Thought it was just Mark being Mark.
On Spark and Fire, creators from different fields share their stories to fuel your creativity. Spark and Fire is a Wait What original in partnership with the BBC. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Wake Up to Money from BBC 5 Live.
Hello, welcome to Wake Up to Money. Coming up, 'twas the strike before Christmas. More rail walkouts are on the way. We've got all the details. Can you try and get your plans back on track? Will they try and be able to get negotiations back on track after these latest developments? Elsewhere, how's your high street doing? We'll go over these exclusive figures we've got that reveal the winners and losers on our high street. We've heard from you lots in the last couple of weeks about this. We want to hear from you more.
I thought there wasn't very much money around, but evidently, people were shopping, they were spending money.
And could a lawsuit from Taylor Swift fans bring an end to high concert ticket prices?
Wake Up to Money with Sean Farrington.
Sounds a bit hopeful, that one, doesn't it? But we will get the answer. A lawsuit. I know from music fans get vexed a fair bit, don't they, about ticket websites. The amount of stories we've done over the years on Wake Up to Money about that. Well, some fans are so vexed, they're suing Ticketmaster. We will get into the details around that. Be interested to know if you recognise any of those stories we're hearing from those Taylor Swift fans on the programme today. Lots to talk about. Coventry City potentially being evicted from its football stadium. We're going to have a look at why the boss of Vodafone has quit. 4-day weeks as well. We've had trials galore this year across the UK and many businesses committing to them now. Have you had a go at that at all? Has there been that chat in your place? But the big story this morning is the RMT union say staff at Network Rail will now walk out at 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve until the 27th of December. It follows the rejection of an 8% pay rise over 2 years that was made by the rail delivery group. Network Rail have accused the RMT of using passengers and workers as pawns in a fight with the government. Chief negotiator there saying they're playing fast and loose with people's Christmas plans. New strike dates announced deliberately target vital engineering work designed to improve the railway. So if you are wondering about, what would the impact be late on Christmas Eve, going through Christmas Day, going through Boxing Day until the early hours of the 27th of December, well, that'd be one aspect of that. There will be people aiming to get trains on that time as well, even if the vast majority of people might have planned to make their moves ahead of time. Of course, there's a knock-on effect as well, and the whole point of this action is to have disruption. That is, the RMT have felt it's necessary to go that far, and its members represents rail industry workers at Network Rail, as well as workers at train operating companies as well. So there is, to go over the numbers, if you're thinking, right, what does this mean for my Christmas travel, for your work travel throughout December? So we've got strikes, 48-hour strikes on the 13th and 14th of December, on the 16th and 17th of December, and now from the 24th to the 27th, from 6 o'clock on the 24th, 6 o'clock in the evening. All of these are so crucial, aren't they, these times? I'm making notes of them myself, because the way you have to then think about your plans around Christmas and the knock-on effect on other people as well. It affects everybody in that way, and workers are going to extremes to put people in that situation. They clearly feel right now that the offer is not good enough from the rail delivery group. Network Rail said its latest offer was its best and final. So we will see. It's definitely ramped up in the last couple of days, hasn't it? I've got Andy Ayin with me on the show this morning, founder of Angel Investing School, which invests in startup businesses. Good morning to you, Andy.
Good morning, Sean. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Has the various disruption through December on the rails, has that impacted your life, crossing your mind in any way at all?
It has. I live out in Essex, so I've been disrupted and it's been difficult for me to get into London. So it's really hard to even plan my days now. But I also empathize because we're seeing strikes across industries. We've seen it in the NHS, and my wife is due to give birth this Christmas. But we're also seeing it even across with the Royal Mail as well, and deliveries. And I understand the frustration, but sadly the impact is felt by the wider public. And as a result, this Christmas, it looks like we're going to have to stay indoors with the family.
All kinds of deliveries going on in the household. Well, hopefully not in the household, Andy. But you never know. That congratulations, that is fantastic news. Lovely to start the programme. You excited?
Yeah, very excited. Very excited.
Great.
Love children.
Well, that's great to know. So yeah, you change your plans like that, Andy. At the same time, you say you empathise. I mean, you're somebody who could be very impacted over the next few weeks in terms of the journeys you might need to make. I mean, with any NHS strikes, we've been told, haven't we, that that the services that you would expect to receive in that situation would not be impacted. So how do you balance the whole thing? Where does the empathy come from for you?
Yeah, for me, to be honest, like if I think about COVID and just going through the pandemic, we were cheering the NHS. Like we were so proud of this service that we've had. But on the flip side, now we're talking about, increasing their pay and getting their just rewards. Now it feels like a lot of people aren't as empathetic to that situation. It bewilders me, to be honest, because I feel like they've worked so hard on this front line that I fully understand why they feel like they may want to be better compensated for a lot of that work, because they're feeling the pinch as well from the cuts that are going on in this environment. So I totally get with the NHS. The sad reality is that in order for them to have an impact, they have to have these strikes, and these strikes obviously impact the general public, just like we're seeing with the rail service.
Got Rachel Winter with me as well today, who's a partner investment manager at Killick, invests in small and large businesses around the UK. Morning to you, Rachel.
Good morning.
Morning. Is there an economic impact of this? Are you able to put almost a number or a reality on this?
Well, it's difficult to put a number, but definitely there's a negative reality. If I just look at all these poor shops and restaurants that have had such a difficult couple of years because of COVID, they're now really struggling because these strikes are making them miss out on the Christmas rush they'd normally have. So shops and restaurants are normally so busy in the run up to Christmas. But if I look at London now, so many people can't come in because of these strikes. And that means that these shops and restaurants are missing out. And then on top of the train strikes, we've also got these Royal Mail strikes. So that means it will be difficult for some of these shops to pick up online trade to replace that in-person trade that they're missing out on because of the train strikes.
When you see what Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the RMT, has said after a meeting yesterday to discuss this latest offer, he says it's unfortunate that the union has been compelled to take this action. We remain available for talks in order to resolve these issues, but we will not bow to pressure from the employers and the government to the detriment of our members. Do you see why workers are reluctant to sign up to 4 or 5% pay rises alongside major changes in working conditions in the current climate?
Yes, I do, because inflation in the UK at the moment is well ahead of 10%. So I completely see why people wouldn't want to sign up to a contract that's giving them a wage increase that's less than that. So I do see it from both sides, but I think there is a negative impact on everyone here.
85058 this morning. Let me know your thoughts. If it impacts you, if you are one of those workers, if you work in the industry, whether you're empathetic, frustrated with what is going on, very much like your thoughts, because it's clearly ramping up, these discussions at the moment. And, at the end of the day, decisions need to be made now, don't they, to get the timetables in place for the next couple of weeks. So I'm sure there'll be more developments in the coming hours and days this week. We've been told that early this week was a real crucial time for the train industry. Will there be a way to ease these issues? 85058 this morning. Let me know your thoughts on that. Now, we're going to have a good look. I mean, we often have a good look on Wake Up to Money about the state of the high street, don't we? Even if we're not explicitly saying it, if people get in touch with us over recent weeks about what how busy it's been in their local town and city centres. And many thanks to all of you who have been in touch, telling me what has been going on. We've definitely got wind of, was it the weekend before last, that it was busy in a lot of places around the country. But how does that compare to other times of the week, to more niche places when you may head to your Christmas market or your best shopping centre where you live and it is busy, but are those streets just off it How are they doing? How are they doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when maybe people are deciding to stay indoors a little bit more? The BBC's got exclusive figures from data taken from every street in England, Scotland and Wales. It's probably no surprise the number of empty shops are on the rise. Department stores are the big losers, but tattoo parlours are on the up. As we talk about this morning, 85058, let me know what's popping up near you and what's disappearing. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty a bit later in the programme, but let's hear from people who've been in touch with us. Yesterday I said, give us a shout. Let me know what last weekend was like. I really wanted to know, was it anything like the weekend before? To get an idea of what it's like across the country. Well, here is Margaret in Cardiff, who got in touch, as well as Julian in Camden.
I'd been outside Cardiff, came back into the city centre in the afternoon on the train. Now, the trains were full, the buses were full, and the city centre was buzzing. It was much busier than usual. It was usually busy as that when there's an event on in the stadium, but there was no event on. But there was a lovely buzz in town. I thought there wasn't very much money around, but evidently, people were shopping, they were spending money, and everybody seemed to be happy.
I go around London quite a lot. I happened to be on Saturday, I was showing some people around. And one of the places I like to go to is the Old Pub. It's a huge pub, but, it does get very popular. And what I was amazed at on a Saturday, around lunchtime, there's one poor bloke just sort of downstairs trying to do everything. So he's pulling the pints down in the bar downstairs. There's also a bar upstairs, but there's no one there. And then he also seemed to be running the table, like waiting the tables in the restaurant area. And the reason why I was particularly worried about it was that as a person who loves London, I'm kind of worried that all these pubs and stuff are going to end up closing. I mean, I'm just looking at this. I just thought, how are they going to carry on doing business like that?
Do either of those stories sound familiar to you? Busy on the high street, busy in the pubs, nobody behind the counter. Maybe you work behind one of those bars. Working, in restaurants at the moment, and just seeing that you can't keep up with demand. Good on that fella at the Ye Olde Cheshire Cheese on Fleet Street in London, where Julian had been in Camden. Thank you to Margaret as well. 85058. Keep your thoughts coming on what is happening in the high street at the minute. Andy, whereabouts in Essex? Where would you head for the local high street?
Epping's my local high street. And I was talking to an elderly woman the other day, actually, in Epping, and she was complaining about the fact that, these banks are closing down, and she's just not as digital as my generation. So I'm like happy to use a mobile banking app. But for her, actually, it's a critical service. And she was really upset with the fact that her local, I believe it was NatWest, had closed down, and she doesn't have access now to go into branches. And I think, like, when we're seeing these cost cuttings across these banks and them closing branches, is actually impacting and alienating a whole generation.
Rachel, footfall, as they call it in the trade, the number of people walking through the doors of our shops and shopping centres and hitting the streets versus amount that's being spent at the tills, at the counters in the bars and restaurants. How does that compare at the moment?
Based in London, I do see that the streets are very busy. It does feel that the footfall is very high. But if we look at the data, it doesn't feel as though people are buying as much. Interestingly, if we look at the last set of inflation data, people are actually having to spend more because things are more expensive. But if we look at the volume of things that they're buying, that figure's actually gone down. So we can see that people are spending more but getting less. 85058 this morning if you want to send me a message about all of that. Right, Rachel, Andy, I wanted to talk crypto with you both. Rachel, it seems that, let me dig out from page of the Financial Times, we're talking to the Treasury ourselves about what is going on in the crypto world at the minute, because we've spent a few weeks talking about the major collapse of one of the world's biggest exchanges where people could buy and sell these digital assets, whether it's cryptocurrencies or things that are built on the back of cryptocurrencies. That FTX exchange was worth $32 billion 1 week, and then a week later worth nothing. You may be familiar with the pictures of Sam Bankman-Fried if you're thinking, who is that guy, that name that's popping up everywhere? Well, that's him. Now, Rachel, what has been the knock-on effect of that? Because is there just a complete lack of momentum now for people to get involved in that crypto world? There is. I think there's a lot of fear. I think a lot of regular people have lost a lot of money on crypto. So I personally think that more regulation is a good thing. I think if we look at regular investments on the stock market, those are very heavily regulated. And as an investment manager, I have to help my clients to buy investments that are of the right risk level for them. Whereas with crypto, there's just no regulation. So a lot of people have just been buying in without really knowing what they're doing and losing a lot of money. So I think more regulation is a good thing. However, I do know that the appeal of crypto for many people is the fact that it's not regulated. So I wonder what impact more regulation will have on the longer term appeal.
Yeah, so if I just look at what the Treasury has told us, this is the Treasury where I think who was the Chancellor then? Jeremy Hunt is Chancellor these days. Rishi Sunak, who's Prime Minister, has talked a lot about this world when he was Chancellor himself. So the Treasury saying that it's already taken steps to bring certain crypto asset activities into the scope of UK regulation, and it's going to consult on proposals for a broader regulatory regime. The reality of that, Rachel, what does that mean for people who may have been tempted to dip their toe in this world, who see the adverts popping up on their social media feeds, even see the influencers that they follow bang on about some of this stuff?
Well, part of the new regulation is looking at whether firms are able to advertise their crypto services. And for example, when I'm in London at the moment, if I'm on the tube, there are so many adverts advertising different crypto platforms, and it looks as though there's going to be a bit of a crackdown on that. So I do believe there is going to be less of a quick growth of the crypto market here in the UK because of this new potential regulation.
Andy, you are, as I described earlier, founder of Angel Investing School. Could you just give us a quick explainer of what you do, what angel investing is?
Sure. So angel investing is when an individual invests in a new startup or business venture. And it's typically a very risky endeavor because most new businesses fail. So again, there's regulation in my industry that you need to be a high net worth individual or a self-certified sophisticated investor in order to even invest into these new startups. And it's interesting that we're talking about crypto because as an unregulated industry, the problem is it's too accessible. So people are able to then invest even though they haven't got the education and awareness of the risk that they're taking when investing into these asset classes such as cryptocurrency. And that's why I think so many people have lost so much money on it, because actually they haven't been educated in making decisions around their investments. And therefore they've hoped, almost like a lottery, that would make them the kind of money and outcomes that sadly it hasn't for majority of society.
And have you seen in your world, people partly looking to make a quick buck, looking for investment? Has anybody ever come to you and said, hey, I've got this idea, might want some of your money, what do you think? And then the word crypto pops up somewhere.
Yes. Like personally, I invest in a lot of people with high potential but low access to capital doing their life's work in the goal of leaving the world in a better place than they joined it. So I'm very mission focused around the entrepreneurs that I invest in. But over the last 2 years, I've definitely seen an increase in entrepreneurs pitching NFTs, Web3, blockchain and crypto and these new technologies. And
just digging out my jargon klaxon. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We did have one. I don't know where I've put it. I should have had it handy. I've got to just pick one out. I like to get people's just who are much closer to this than we are thoughts on what these things are. You said NFT. That will be something that people will see popping up, whether it's footballers or football clubs or what their favourite influencers trying to tweet, Instagram about all of this stuff. Can you explain, in your words, what is an NFT? How do you see it?
Absolutely. So NFT actually stands for the word non-fungible token, and is a unique, basically digital identifier that cannot be copied. So there can only be one version of these NFTs. And what they're essentially very similar to is almost like what we see in art, right? So you have a unique painting like, a Picasso picture, the Mona Lisa. And the very first copy of that Mona Lisa is worth its mint in gold. But actually, there's various copies of that picture that aren't worth as much. And NFTs are essentially trying to replicate that in the digital world in terms of these rare assets. The challenge today is actually how much value do you place on these NFTs? And it's similar with crypto, actually. It's like how much value do you place on it when there's not very clear use cases in the real world applications today? It's not like I can go to the bank and spend crypto, or I can go to the Costa Coffee and buy my coffee with crypto. So that's the challenge for a lot of people, really understanding like how valuable is this in reality.
Well, if there's anywhere, Andy, it's the East End of London, not a million miles from you, where you might have half a chance of getting a
you never know
a cappuccino with a few bitcoins or whatever it might be. I'm sure that popped up at some point. Rachel, speaking to you and your colleagues in the investment industry, we'd have been talking about, as we will later in the show, the likes of Vodafone, big companies that people can invest in. We talk about the pound and talk about commodities like gold, all of this kind of stuff. Have you and your industry, let's call it a traditional industry, been forced to look at the crypto world as a place to put your money? When I say your money, I mean, people's money that you invest for them in that world because of its popularity?
Well, it's actually caused quite a few problems for us because we're what's called an advisory investment manager. So we give our clients advice on what investments we think are right for them when we know about their financial circumstances. Because crypto isn't regulated, we're literally not allowed to give advice on it, and we're not even allowed to buy it for our clients. So the problem we've had is that we've had so many questions about it from clients, and yet we're not allowed to comment on it or even to buy it for them. So I think at least having some more regulation will allow us to have something about it to speak about with our clients.
Andy, just looking a bit more at what you do at Angel Investing School, you mentioned how you what was the phrase you used, the type of people you like to invest in, those looking to improve the world? Is that about the rough idea? I was just seeing some of the businesses that you invest in. Sustainable fashion startup Wearing might be one where you're on the board of that. You've invested in the likes of Farmland, Ava Estelle. So what makes these businesses stand out for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I love really supporting mission-led founders that are really trying to change the world for the better. So earlier on, we talked about the changing nature of the high street. And one of the startups that I invested in was Patch, whose mission is to create new opportunities on every high street in the UK. And they started off in Chelmsford and they took over the old Debenham store that was closed for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Right? So how can we resurrect the high street and make it look better? Another startup is Unplugged, who provide digital detoxes in cabins across the country so that we can really lock away our phones and our technology and just take time away from tech and just take a break. And when I think about the impact of that on the world, I'm like, actually, yeah, we need these kind of problems solved in the world, because we struggle right now with how much we're plugged into technology. And Wearing is a good example, which you touched on, who are providing digital wardrobes for over 1 million customers to help influence people to reuse their clothes, to buy secondhand clothes, and not to spend too much on fast fashion, which obviously is causing issues in terms of landfills.
Interesting. Do you have to accept lower returns if some of those businesses you mentioned, some of the kind of thing you think that's exactly what I need, but often there's a reason these things don't exist, because there's a struggle to make them work profitably and sustainably. So are there compromises you have to make along the way?
Absolutely. And one of the key things that we talk about when we teach people about angel investing is that the primary motivation can't be to make money. Actually, the primary motivation has to be maybe altruistic in terms of paying it forward for your community, or learning about a new technology, or buying into a mission that you really believe in. But typically, angel investors are often business owners themselves, or very successful in certain careers that they have. So actually, then they're risking and putting at risk less than even 5% of their net wealth into really supporting these entrepreneurs because of that mission or that purpose that they believe in. It isn't often their primary a primary way of making money or an income.
Talking about our high street, M&S, last week, I think it was, they mopped up this business called Thread, which I've seen over the years, again, pop up on my sort of Facebook and Instagram feeds. I've never clicked on it and seen what it was, but always being told, it's a sort of AI, artificial intelligence-led wardrobe assistant, enabling you to get outfits and the right type of clothes and that make you feel good and all of that kind of stuff, but without the the hassle of one of those maybe lockdown businesses that did really well, without the hassle or the need to go into a shop and try on a load of clothes and all that kind of stuff. What does that tell you about where the high street is going, or where some of our biggest retailers are going? That M&S Thread went bust, so it went into administration. M&S picked up the intellectual property behind that. So they've got all the software and everything that sort of comes with it. So they like the idea of that wardrobe assistant online thing. What does that mean for the service we're all going to be getting in the years to come?
I think it's a challenging one because in reality, like one of the biggest cost barriers for a lot of retailers is it's actually returns, right? So like for every, I think $1 billion in sales, they see over nearly 200 million in returns. And we see this with services that are just digital and online, like ASOS, right? Like they make it really attractive and easy to make your returns, but actually that's such a big cost. So the reason that an M&S would pick up something like a Thread is because they're actually in their minds thinking, how do we reduce the cost of returns? Like, how do we lower that and make it easier for customers to buy outfits that fit or buy outfits that look good on their body and they can try that before they buy it? So I understand why M&S is going that direction. The challenge again is it will come back to the high street. Are we going to now see cost cutting from M&S? Are we going to now see less stores on the high street? Like, and I'm someone who loves to try on clothes before I buy it. I'm still quite old school in that respect. So I don't think a digital AI version of me trying on the clothes is going to quite replace that behavior that I have around just trying it, looking at how it feels, understanding if it needs to get tailored before making a decision to purchase.
I guess, Rachel, Andy might not have a choice if the labour shortages that we hear about, we heard about in the pub earlier, one bloke running 3 different floors and serving tables and pulling pints, everything. If that continues, is that kind of thing pushing these, again, traditional businesses that we would think M&S would be out walking into the shop and having that experience to think of other ways to get around that?
Yes, definitely. I think a lot of stores now do not have their full range in their physical stores. So if you want to access the full range, you've got to go and look online. We've also got a lot of newer clothing brands that only operate online. So I think it is forcing more and more of us to just look at clothes online and to order them online. I think there is also an overwhelming amount of choice in terms of clothing brands that we could go and buy our clothes from. So having something like this Thread software that recommends items that it thinks might be suitable for a particular client, I think actually will really help people to save time and also to reduce the number of returns. I think that's a really good point. So I think more stores and more brands are likely to start using software like this more in the future.
Did see a story somewhere and I can't see where it is, and I will find it in the next few minutes. There we go. Record volumes of goods returned after Black Friday. So it clearly is a major, it's not all about clothes, obviously, but clearly is a major issue for a lot of those retailers. Right, it's 5:30. More to come from Andy and Rachel. We're going to be having a look at Coventry City 4-day weeks, hearing more on the high street as well as we delve into what is really going on behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. I never go to a town centre at weekend, other times once a month, says Tony in Basingstoke. Why not, Tony? Let me know. 85058. We'll go through a few more of your messages in a moment. West Dorset, crazy, says one. We'll look at why that is in a moment.
Wake Up to Money with Sean Farrington.
Good morning. It's Wake Up to Money on 5 Live. It's Tuesday morning, the 6th of December. I hope everybody in Wolverhampton is all right. That massive fire just outside the city centre, I mean pretty much in the city centre at those factories. Let us know if you are in that vicinity at all, and what is going on there. 100 firefighters called to a major fire in Wolverhampton overnight to deal with that blaze. We've had plenty of you getting in touch about everything we're talking about. Somebody saying about Royal Mail strikes. I worked over Christmas at a Royal Mail sorting office. They treated the temps like rubbish. We were being paid half of the money to do the same job. Rugby bloke on Twitter says the unions across the board are just trying to bring down the government by striking. They don't care about their members or the public. This is a TUC coordinated action, they say. Another says inflation may be 10%, but the main part is gas and electricity. The government have given well over £500 to most households, so this amount should be deducted from pay increases. So maybe pay deals should be lower than the inflation headline rate. Tommy says, hi Sean, morning Tommy. Posties are striking for the future of the postal service. If Royal Mail get their way, you'll be looking to get letters delivered 3 days a week, less if you don't live in a big mainland city. Talking about or more on strikes here. All the current strikes, even nurses, are a result of a capitalist attitude from those at the top, says Alan in Bedfordshire. Bosses' pay and bonuses up massively. Huge dividends paid out, while those that do the work and make the organisations function are told there's no money for a pay rise. We're in a survival of the richest society and the poor are becoming more numerous. I've got Rachel Winter with me this morning, who's a partner and investment manager at Killick. Rachel, that question that Alan raises about executive pay, and even, we've had Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, say bosses at companies across the UK, these big companies, need to have pay restraint. Are you seeing that at all? Because every boss that I speak to seems to be defending their level of pay at the moment rather than saying, yes, we should be taking a pay cut.
I don't think we've seen a huge amount of restraint. I think we are seeing more justification for why some bosses are paying what they're paid. I think we're seeing more specific targets to help justify why some of these bosses are getting so much. I think it's actually becoming more common for some bosses to reject a particularly high bonus because it looks so bad to receive such a large bonus when the rest of the country is suffering so much in terms of the cost of living. But I still do think that very senior bosses are paid a huge amount of money in comparison to the average person.
That West Dorset message I said was going to be on its way. Here in West Dorset, crazy out of season. Few tourists. Tried to go out for dinner or a drink last Friday without a booking. First stop, our local pub, completely packed, no tables, 5 deep at the bar. Tried 3 other places. But local villages almost laughed at when I asked if they had a table. Eventually found somewhere, but only in the bar area. I kept saying, what cost of living crisis? 85058. What are you seeing on the high streets right now? Even just friends and family, the spending. How much of a divide is there? Because we know many people have been squeezed like never before when it comes to their incomes and prices this year. Is this just one massive group of people who had a load of savings built up over lockdowns, able to go out and spend, while we have another massive group of people who are really struggling at the minute to just get their bills paid? 85058. When somebody asked the question, as that person did, what cost of living crisis? Have you got an answer for that? We've got these exclusive figures for the BBC showing that there were more than 9,000 fewer retail shops across England, Scotland, Wales, 3% less than in March 2020, before the pandemic properly kicked off here in the UK. Other places in decline include nightclubs and banks, while there are 2,000 more cafes, 4,600 more fast food shops. The results are based on looking at more than 1 million pieces of data from Ordnance Survey. Tattoo and piercing studios up more than 8%. The BBC's Mark Easton spoke to Tony Davis, who owns a tattoo parlour in Kendal and Cumbria.
You can't get a tattoo online, you can't get a haircut online, If you go to some cities in England, you can have 3, 4, 5, 6 studios down the same street.
On the other hand, there were 328 fewer department stores. That's why in Kendal, businesswoman Jerry Ward is redeveloping the town's old department store.
It's a small county town in the north of England. It was dying when Beales closed. It began to die. People stopped coming here. So we thought provide more of a location where tourists and locals can come to, with smaller independent retailers inside. The fantastic artisans, the entrepreneurs, the food producers, the food makers.
It's a real celebration of the local area.
So that was Beales they were talking about, the massive department store there. Everybody's got one that they go to at some point of the year, don't they? It might be in your local city centre. It might be that you make a trip to it, or everybody's had one at least over the decades. Maybe you don't have one anymore. Andy Ayem, who's with me, Angel Investing School founder, invest in startups. Andy, you mentioned earlier one of your startups was about turning around a Debenhams store, one of the startups that you got involved in. So what can the plan be? I'm intrigued. I'd like people to message me about this, 85058 this morning, about what is happening right now. I'm trying to think of the Beaties in Wolverhampton. There's a lot of sort of nice boarding around it at the moment, but the Frasers, the whatever has been in there since, they've all moved into the main shopping centre now. Debenhams was in the main shopping centre, that's gone. So what do you do with one of these old beautiful buildings?
I think that's a challenge, actually, because, for an independent business that's setting up, like, business rates can be quite high and challenging. There's high interest rates at the moment. It's actually quite difficult as an independent to really move into a massive store that, and keep hold of those stores. So what I've seen in certain areas, actually, especially in Epping, is there's certain discount stores that are moving in, like B&M or Lidl, or these more affordable shopping stores where actually there's more demand now while people are feeling the squeeze and turning to these kind of stores to try and get things at a discount, get things at an affordable price. I think these stores are actually on the increase as well during these times. And the person that owned the tattoo parlor raises a really good point. There's certain services that just can't be replicated online, like getting a tattoo or getting a haircut. So we're going to need those physical services still. I think it's actually really a shame sometimes when we hear about the increase in terms of like fast food and chicken and chip shops, because that can often impact actually a lot of the youth that are spending time in these areas on these high streets and maybe looking for something to do. And as a consequence, seeing the likes of betting shops and chicken and chip shops on their high street. So we're losing certain times a pride that we used to have in a high street. I know how my mom used to be so proud of, the BHS store, which closed down when we were growing up, and all of these kind of stores that are sadly leaving our high street.
How many times were you taken around the lighting department by your mum, Andy, at the back of a BHS?
Yeah, with a lot of resistance, of course. I didn't really want to be there, did I?
When you said it, I've got exactly that image in my head of all the lights that all sort of look the same. I never really understood what was going on there. The mirrors and everything. Yeah, but it was a major part of it, wasn't it? I've got Tom Whittington here with me, who's Retail and Leisure Research Director at Savills Estate Agents. Morning, Tom.
Morning.
So how is this playing out for you in reality? What your week at work this week, what are the main things you're working on about the high street changing?
Well, it is often about repurposing, but it's also about recognising what retail we need to champion and celebrate. It's about right-sizing retail. It's about not replacing it. We've certainly got far too much space. Your analysis actually pick up on some really important trends and ones that we've been seeing evolving for some time, and COVID has really just accelerated them. We're up to about 150 million square feet of retail voids nationally, and about 40% of these have been empty for more than 3 years, so that predates the pandemic. And the good news is that property developers and investors are now looking at other things to do with those spaces, and it's becoming potential to make much more positive spaces. You talked about department stores before, huge swathes of footprints, quite often 80,000 square feet or more on a high street. And we're seeing those turned into all sorts of things, from museums, co-working spaces, education facilities, health and medical centres. And these have the potential to breathe life back into those town centres.
What about the rents on these places? How much has that changed to actually encourage new businesses who want to make a go of it and even more traditional businesses who might find there's a better unit in the certain town centre to actually think this is now worthwhile for me? Have there been changes there?
Yeah, definitely. We're seeing a bit of a tipping point there. So we've seen a rebasing of rents over the course of the last 5 years, probably of about 20% nationally, but up to sort of 30% in shopping centres. But probably of more note, and it's been discussed already, is what's happening with the business rate revaluation, which takes effect from the 1st of April next year. This has been something that the retail market has been crying out for years, and it's now happening. So we're seeing huge reductions, a reduction of 10% nationally in retail, but in some places it's far more nuanced. We're seeing up to 75% reductions in places. And the great thing is this is bringing some positivity back to the market. Independents were mentioned before, the challenges that they have in terms of paying their rents to get into those spaces, and they're really important of creating a sense of place of community and a point of difference. And those business rates are just going to make it a little bit more affordable, because obviously there's lots of other challenges around cost of living that affect both consumers and occupiers at the moment. And that business rate is going to be really, really positive.
Somebody's just messaged about that, actually, Tom, saying, I've been hearing about business rates for over 20 years. Maybe they've been listening to Wake Up to Money for that period. A lot of small shops have gone under due to this. It's absurd that the government hasn't changed this. You're talking about some major changes. We had some announcements about it in the autumn statement. So is that it now? That reform that everybody's been talking about for so long, have we had it?
It's certainly looking that way for next year. There are certain parts of the market that will be affected. So retail, so sheds, industrial retail is going up. But actually for retail shops, it is a massive step change. Yeah, so really, really positive. And I think we're seeing an increase in activity. Because of it, we're seeing deals that were perhaps falling over because of the cost of living crisis and an increase in energy. Some retailers expecting 400% increases in energy this year alone. And that business rates change just has the potential to bring things back together.
Tom, thank you so much. Tom Whittingham there, Whittington from Savills, talking about what's happening in the High Street right now. Savills Estate Agents, the Retail and Leisure Research Director there. Beth's been in touch, Andy. Listening to Andy explain things so eloquently, I think he should be training the government. I've never understood cryptocurrency and NFTs, but the comparison to the Mona Lisa has really helped to start making sense of it. Andy's great. There you go, Andy. That's a nice little start to your day.
That's lovely, ain't it?
Yeah, well, there you go. Beth's probably going to lump all of her savings into crypto now because of you. So we'll hold you responsible. No, only joking.
She better speak to Rachel, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've got experts galore for you, Beth. And keep your questions coming. 85058. Basically, what I do every day is just have a load of questions and ask these experts who just come on all the time. Right, let's have a look at Coventry City Football Club now. Looking for a new home after being served with an eviction notice by the new owner. And it's Mike Ashley's Frasers Group who took over the stadium last month after buying its 3 former operating companies. They say the Championship side has no right to continue to use the ground unless it signs a new licence. The club says they understood their existing agreement stood until 2031. Football finance expert Kieran Maguire is with me now. Kieran, morning to you.
Morning, Al Sean.
Morning. So, Kieran, is this just another example of Mike Ashley and his team playing hardball, or is it a reality that Coventry City may be booted out its stadium?
I think it is a negotiation tactic. Mike Ashley is probably doing the most Mike Ashley thing ever in terms of he is using the advantage that he has in terms of being the ground owner to try to negotiate a good deal. At the same time, the owners of Coventry City, who are a hedge fund called Sisu, they have had a number of disputes with a variety of landlords over the years because they've tried to buy the ground themselves and have failed. And I think they are trying to perhaps leverage on what's happened with Wasps and the stadium to try to get a better deal for themselves in terms of selling the club.
So, Kieran, you follow these things pretty closely. When you see, you mentioned that Coventry City owned by a hedge fund. That might not be what people were expecting to hear when we were talking about this story about, maybe a lot of people will see it as poor old Coventry City being booted out the stadium. So what's that hedge fund wanting to get out of Coventry City at the moment with its ownership?
Well, I think when Sisu, who are the owners, when they originally bought Coventry City, they felt that there was an opportunity to buy the stadium as well and then sell the whole thing as a complete package and make a sizable return on that. That has never really come to pass, and Coventry are now in a complex situation in the sense that CISO Capital Fund and Arvo Master Fund, who have now lent between them almost £50 million. They want to get their money back, and trying to sell a football club without a football ground is a challenge. The Mike Ashley issue is a further complication when Sisu are now trying to find new owners. And if you sell a football club with a sizable financial commitment in terms of rent, that lowers the price because effectively that's less money to spend on other things. So it's very messy, and also there are third parties involved in terms of wanting to buy the club, and they will be nudging Sisu as to what they want there.
Kieran, thank you. Kieran Maguire there, host of the Price of Football podcast, football finance expert, explaining what is going on at Coventry City there. And of course, whoever the owners, the fans behind it, you wake up and the people who work at Coventry City and you see all of this stuff going on. It can be a horrible time, as we've covered with many football clubs over recent years. Now, she's a global superstar, had 10 songs in the top US 10 when she released this album in October. Here's a few of them.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Let's believe I'm still bejeweled when I walk in the room.
So the problem here wasn't Taylor Swift, but tickets for her shows and the inability to get them for fans. Now a group of music fans are suing Ticketmaster and its parent company Live Nation in the United States over accusations of fraud, price fixing, antitrust violations. All sounds pretty extreme, doesn't it? Kerry Curtis Axel is a partner at the law firm Waymaker, based in Los Angeles, handles deals in fraud and antitrust litigation cases. Morning, Kerry.
Good morning.
Morning. So, when we look at this lawsuit filed in LA by these supporters, They say artificially high prices were imposed on fans. I mean, where's the legal argument here? Why is this case being brought?
I'm not sure exactly. I mean, people were very angry, right? Fans were very angry because they were promised that because they were verified fans, they would get a step up in line ahead of other people. And there's a lot of, very devoted Swifties out there. So they're very upset. I say I'm not sure why this case, because there's a difference between consumers being harmed and competition being harmed. So I think I'm not sure it's really an antitrust case as much as it really is a trade practices case, where as to these fans, they felt that the sales representations were untrue and they were deceived.
How much can, even if maybe you're not fully convinced of the certain legal aspects of this, can just the high profile nature of a case, so looking at where touts were allowed to buy the vast majority of tickets, this is part of the case being made, that were then being resold for more than $2,000 just hours later. Now, people in the UK will be very familiar with that experience, but can a legal approach, a suing of Ticketmaster in this case, actually bring about change?
That's one of the problems with the suits. I don't know what your law is in the UK. I know in some places it's very hard to resell tickets. Here in the US, it's very easy to resell tickets. We have many platforms where people can do that. So the idea that, tickets can sell for $700 and turn around and be sold for thousands is very common here. We have many platforms for that.
Everybody happy with that?
I'm not sure that's the injury they're really complaining about. I mean, the hard part is that people like Taylor Swift are trying to work with Ticketmaster to get rid of bots so that common customers can have a chance to get them in the first place. That seems to be the real problem.
Right.
And Congress is interested in that as well. So a lawsuit like this is part of the customer outrage that may, help the law change, that would make it fairer to individual buyers.
Is it just ingrained then that for these events, the market rules amongst customers that people are willing to pay? I mean, it's funny when you hear of some of the ticket prices for American football games or for basketball games and what people are willing to pay for just a standard ticket. We can moan about soccer prices here in the UK, but it can get quite eye-watering. Is that just the way of life? Is that the way it is in the US?
I think it is. We have StubHub, we have Vivid Seats, SeatGeek. We have all of these different platforms. It's very legal here. I mean, conversely, I had friends that tried to attend the Women's World Cup in Paris and couldn't get tickets and couldn't understand why the system there is far more restrictive. So I think it is somewhat the American way that we're going to have these really expensive resellers. The problem here is how to make the first round more fair. And to the extent these plaintiffs have a claim or a beef, it's with that. And that's what Taylor Swift wanted as well. And that didn't happen.
Have you ever been stung for way more than you wanted, but actually decided to shell out because it was the dream ticket, Kerry?
Hamilton.
Oh, nice. Nice, that is worth it.
But my daughter, I have mentioned, my daughter did get tickets as a verified fan and is looking forward to going and seeing Taylor Swift next summer here in LA.
So that's Taylor Swift in LA. Where did you go? Where did you get to see Hamilton in the end?
I saw it here in LA also.
Excellent.
But it was the same thing. Very competitive. There was a long queue. When the tickets were released, you had to wait online, and they sold out very quickly. You're scrambling to figure out what dates. I mean, here it was way more chaotic. People waited in line for hours, and then things weren't in the cart anymore, or they weren't allowed to put in their codes until they had waited in line, which meant that there were a lot of people waiting in line who weren't verified. Those are the types of things that the Swifties are upset about.
Well, let's see how the Swifties get on with this case. Thanks, Kerry. Kerry Curtis Axel there, who's a partner at the law firm Waymaker in LA. Ticketmaster has not publicly commented on the lawsuit, but has previously apologised to fans for a terrible experience as they tried to buy tickets. In a November statement, Live Nation said it takes its responsibilities under the antitrust laws seriously. Right, 4-day week. We've talked about it a lot this year. Back in June, you might remember we looked at these 70 UK companies that were about to start a 6-month trial. looking at this as a possible new way of working. Well, Pressure Drop Brewing, based in North London, one of the companies taking part, Sam Smith is a co-founder of the company, joins me now. Sam, morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning. How's it been?
It's been good. It's been a success from our point of view, and we're intending to carry on with it for the moment.
Well, interesting. So for the moment, why is it still almost under trial for you?
Well, I guess the main reason for that is that there's some caution on our part due to the uncertain economic environment and external factors that we're facing, along with most other small businesses at the moment. So we want to retain some flexibility for the moment, rather than making anything contractual. But we don't want to go backwards, and I can't imagine a scenario in which we would. But we're continuing it on a trial basis for the moment for that reason.
Interesting. So what are the risks then, given the economic environment? Why would a 4-day week make things maybe a little more tricky, even if it's what policy-wise you want as a business?
Well, I mean, we still have the COVID to deal with, for one thing. So we're quite a small team. We have about 10 people. So if we lose a person or two, that has a disproportionate impact on us. We also have an inflationary environment that we haven't really dealt with before, and it's one where we see rising costs that we can't necessarily pass on to our customers. And our customers have challenges to their spending power that we think we haven't really seen the worst of yet. And while I don't want to sound too doom and gloom, the 4-day week is something positive that we've tried to do in this environment, and we want to carry on doing that. We see that there are risks out there that we can't necessarily anticipate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So in terms of your staff, have they been liking well, it's not even supposed to be compressed hours, is it? It's just doing your job in 4 days.
Exactly. It's not meant to be less work, but it's not meant to be compressed hours either. And I think that they've responded really well to it in terms of their ability to be efficient, to manage their time, to anticipate issues. I think lots of our staff kind of behave a bit like managers now. And it has been a management challenge because we're a production environment. We have to be open all the time. We can't all just take the same day off. We have to keep everything running. We have to look after the beers in tank. We have to get beer out the door. We have to package it. So, there are a variety of challenges there. And as I said, some of our staff have kind of taken that on in the manner of managers, which has been a pleasing outcome. And obviously, they've enjoyed the personal benefits of it as well.
And so in terms of the days of the week, Sam, that people would like versus what you can give them, how does that work?
Well, we tend to rotate it. I mean, it depends on the role of the person. So for sales staff, for example, it makes more sense for them to have a fixed day off, which is Friday, which is generally quiet. For the production staff, it's more of a question of rotation. And we've tried to follow the guidance of the 4-day week global program and the founders of that program and other people who have done this with their business. And the guidance has always been, look, do it the way that works for your business, as long as it's perceived as fair by the employees, then you can do it however you like, and that's how we've done it. And we rotate it basically to try to make it fair on people, and that everyone gets the Friday off, which is obviously the preferred day, in a fair proportion.
And you, Sam, do you get a 4-day week?
Yes, I do, and I've enjoyed that too. I mean, one of the reasons we did this, we. Off the back of the pandemic, it's obviously changed how people view work, and we wanted to do something that.
Good to hear. Sam, I'm going to wrap it there because we've got it. Sorry, I squeezed another one in. Sam Smith from Pressure Drop Brewing. That's it from Wake Up to Money.
Wake Up to Money from BBC 5 Live.
That's it from Wake Up to Money. You can download the podcast every Monday to Friday, so please make sure you subscribe. We'd also love it if you left us a review when you do. Get in touch, keep the conversation going anytime as well on social media. Use the hashtag Wake Up to Money.
3 words: grand, theft, auto.
Or as millions of us know it, GTA.
It involves stealing cars,
innovative,
joyriding,
provocative,
and being chased by police cars.
Fun.
I'm Bugsy Malone, and this is my grandest game. For 25 years now, it's been one of the most controversial games on the planet.
What earthly good can come from producing a game that allows you to behave like this?
I'm one of the very best. It said a lot to me about my life when I needed it most. And that's a story that's going to get told.
Bugsy Malone, My Grandest Game.
Out now on BBC Sounds.
This week on the podcast Spark and Fire, visual artist Mark Bradford.
People always ask, well, didn't you know when you were in 5th grade and you were creative?
Mark has to learn how to embrace himself as an artist and find what he needs to create.
I didn't grow up like that. Thought it was just Mark being Mark.
On Spark and Fire, creators from different fields share their stories to fuel your creativity. Spark and Fire is a Wait What original in partnership with the BBC. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts.